Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Xizhi. Coming up in this edition, China and the European Union are looking to ease tensions and strengthen ties as they prepare for a summit later this month. U.S. House Republicans remain deadlocked over President Donald Trump's massive tax and spending bill. And South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says his government will swiftly restore relations with China and Russia. We begin in Europe. China and the European Union are looking to ease tensions and strengthen ties as they prepare for a summit later this month. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has met EU leaders in Brussels, calling for dialogue over division. Li Jianhua reports from Brussels.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with key EU leaders in Brussels on Wednesday ahead of the upcoming China-EU summit later this month. China's top envoy held talks with European Council President Antonio Costa, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas and Belgian Deputy Prime Minister Maxime Prévost, part of an effort to prepare for what could be a pivotal meeting amid rising geopolitical tensions. Chief among Wednesday's meetings, Wang and Kallas co-chaired the 13th round of China-EU high-level strategic dialogue. Kallas, widely seen as one of the EU's more hawkish voices on China, described the two sides as important economic partners, but pointed to persistent issues around market access. She also raised concerns over international conflicts, especially in Ukraine. Kallas urged Beijing to play a more active role in ending the crisis, while also stressing that Europe needs, in her words, a dose of realism in its dealings with China. Wang, for his part, said the focus of China-EU relations should be collaboration, not differences. He called for both sides to manage disputes, strengthen understanding and act as pillars of stability amid global geopolitical uncertainty. He also stressed that the challenges in China-EU ties are not caused by China. Earlier in the day, Wang met with European Council President Antonio Costa. The Chinese Foreign Minister warned against the rising unilateralism and what he called bullying in the international system, urging China and the EU as two major global powers to act as anchors of stability. Costa echoed the need for mutual respect and said the EU is committed to working with China to address shared challenges and ensure the success of the upcoming summit. The meetings come as both sides seek to ease tensions and address a list of long-standing friction points, including EU tariffs on Chinese-made EVs, China's anti-dumping investigations into European pork and brandy, and the Chinese export restrictions on rare earths.
That was Li Jianhua in Brussels. In Latin America, the BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro is just days away, and the spotlight this year is on the bloc's economic boom. The 5 original countries and expanded members and partners will discuss key issues ranging from financing and technology to expanding membership. Najma Abdi-Rizak has more on the bloc's expansion and its economic significance.
The countdown is on for the 17th BRICS summit as Brazil prepares for the midpoint of its presidency. This year, the meeting in Rio de Janeiro is expected to set the stage for an expanded alliance. The core members, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, will be shaping a bolder BRICS alongside 6 newcomers, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia and Saudi Arabia. Joining their fold but not as full members, 9 nations, Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Thailand, Uganda and Uzbekistan, which have partner country status. Together, the BRICS members represent a significant economic powerhouse, with their economies growing visibly since the first summit in 2009. They represent a significant share of the world's population, nearly half, generating around 40% of global GDP. According to the World Economic Outlook report released in April by the International Monetary Fund, BRICS member countries are now projected to exceed the global economic growth average in 2025, reaching 3.4% in GDP growth against the world average of 2.8%. The report shows in 2024 alone, BRICS collectively reached 4% of GDP growth, while global growth stood at 3.3%. The 11-member bloc of emerging economies play an important role in global trade networks, accounting for 24% of international trade. BRICS Plus reached a major milestone ahead of the summit, their internal trade hitting the $1 trillion mark. But as Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva prepares to host his BRICS counterparts, they have a daunting task ahead. Their trade explosion and growing GDP facing tests from U.S. President Donald Trump's aggressive trade policies and global uncertainty.
I said we're going to put a 100% tariff on every one of those nations.
All eyes now on Rio de Janeiro for BRICS response and how the bloc's leaders plan to show a united front. Rio has indicated that its presidency will focus on two priorities: Global South cooperation and BRICS partnerships for social, economic and environmental development.
That was Najma Abdi Rizak reporting. In North America, U.S. House Republicans remain deadlocked over President Donald Trump's massive tax and spending bill, with hardliners objecting to its potential $3.4 trillion cost and medical aid cuts. House Speaker Mike Johnson and Trump have tried to persuade holdouts, delaying a procedural vote. Trump has been pushing to get the bill passed before Friday. Owen Fairclough has more from Washington, D.C.
U.S. President Donald Trump wants to sign off on his signature piece of legislation on July the 4th, the day that Americans celebrate their independence. But lawmakers are making him wait for it. The lower House of Representatives deadlocked over this huge, sprawling piece of legislation that contains tax cuts, funding for defense, border security, and even that very controversial policy of deporting undocumented migrants. But some of the most fiscally conservative Republicans in the lower house have a red line. They object to Trump making tax cuts to the tune of trillions of dollars, only to load up the national debt by trillions of dollars. For them, the U.S. has been living beyond its means for too long, and they want to put a stop to this. Democrats, on the other hand, are more focused on cuts to things like government food programs and government-mandated health care. And they sense this is a moment to try and leverage that disunity among Republican ranks. Democrats gathering on the steps of the Capitol early this Wednesday before their business began in earnest to try to appeal to Republicans to join them and kill off this piece of legislation that Trump wants so badly to stamp his authority on his presidency. Earlier, the most senior Democrat in the lower House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, spoke. Let's hear from him.
And all we need are 4 Republicans, just 4, to show John McCain-level courage. Just 4. There are 220 of them. All we need are 4. And so all we have to do as a Congress is act in a manner consistent with the better angels of this country. Stand up for everyday Americans, not the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected.
Hakeem Jeffries there referencing the late John McCain, considered by many to be one of the most bipartisan lawmakers ever, a lawmaker who defied his Republican Party by joining Democrats when Trump tried to kill off former President Barack Obama's signature health program during Trump's first term. But there's another figure looming in all of this, Elon Musk. He also is very much against loading up the U.S. national debt with tax cuts, even threatening the Republicans who vote for this legislation with a new party, potentially a third party in U.S. politics. It's been given the working title, reportedly, the America Party.
That was Owen Fairclough reporting from Washington. Turning to the Middle East, the Associated Press reports that U.S. contractors say their colleagues are firing live ammunition on Palestinians seeking food at aid distribution sites. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is a U.S. and Israel-backed organization providing food in Gaza. Palestinians say the food distribution centers have become death traps. Julia Franco with the Associated Press has more.
Testimonies and videos obtained by the Associated Press show American contractors guarding aid distribution sites inside Gaza are using live ammunition and stun grenades as hungry Palestinians scramble for food. 2 U.S. contractors who spoke to us on the condition of anonymity because they were revealing their employer's internal operations said they were coming out because they were disturbed by what they saw as dangerous and irresponsible practices. Both have extensive military experience. They say the security staff on site were often unqualified, unvetted, and had an open license to do whatever they wished. The AP also had the videos analyzed by 2 audio forensic experts who say they could identify live ammunition, including machine gun fire, coming from the sites, in most cases within 50 to 60 meters of the camera's microphone. In another video, what appear to be heavily armed American security contractors at one of the sites discuss how to disperse Palestinians nearby. One is heard saying he has arranged for a show of force by Israeli tanks. "I don't want this to be too aggressive," he says. At that moment, bursts of gunfire erupt close by, at least 15 shots. One says, "I think you hit one." Then one shouts, "Hell yeah, boy." The camera's view is obscured by a large dirt mound. The contractor who took the video told AP that he saw other contractors shooting in the direction of Palestinians who had just collected their food and were departing.
That was Julia Franco reporting. A new round of Israeli airstrikes has killed 40 more people in Gaza. Local health authorities say the deaths include the director of the Indonesian hospital, one of the largest medical institutions in the Strip. The strikes hit the director's apartment in the Gaza city, killing at least 3 of his family members. Rami Almagari has more from Gaza.
More deadly Israeli attacks or operations against the Gaza Strip and all over the parts of the Gaza Strip. Multiple airstrikes hit the Khan Yunis area to the south of the Gaza Strip, including orphans shelter camp, also a displaced family to the Mawasi area to the west of Khan Yunis was hit, claiming the lives of 6 family members from same family. Other strikes hit the Zaytun neighborhood in eastern Gaza City, where Israeli army operations have been intensified over the eastern parts of Gaza as well as the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. This paramount military pressure by the Israeli government by the Israeli army comes against the backdrop of some talks about a possible ceasefire in the upcoming days.
President Trump has made many promises, and every one of them has failed. Much of our hope has been in vain. Now our only hope is in God. May He put an end to this war. This war is despicable.
Every time they say the war is ending, more of us are killed. We lose more of our loved ones. They mock us when they say the war will be over. If they truly wanted to end it, they would have done so long ago. But this war will not end. The war will end us.
That was a report on the latest Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. Elsewhere in Asia, at least 4 people are dead and dozens missing after a ferry carrying 65 people capsized near Bali. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto has ordered the National Search and Rescue Agency to action. Authorities say strong winds, large waves and powerful currents are hampering rescue efforts. Sukina Alawalia has more.
According to the Search and Rescue Agency, their focus right now is to find the missing passengers. When the seas are rough, it's not easy, and that's why the search and rescue operation will definitely take some time. Local authorities in both East Java and Bali have mobilized some type of emergency response teams. The thunderstorms have been really strong. Weather is definitely hampering some of the search and rescue efforts. There also have been flooding. This is unusual in June. Marine conditions like this are also very unpredictable.
That's Sukina Alwalia reporting. And finally, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says his government will swiftly restore relations with China and Russia. He made the remarks while marking his first 30 days in office. Lee addressed the key concerns of the public, including economic policies, trade issues, and bilateral relations. Shin Han reports from Seoul.
Well, it was the earliest any South Korean president has held a formal press conference this early into their presidency. The norm or tradition is for presidents to hold a 100-day sort of press conference, but Lee Jae-myung deciding to hold his first press conference the first month of his term so as to show that his administration is very much for this sort of open communication and transparency. It was a wide-ranging sort of press conference that went well over schedule. usual. It ranged topics from the economy to foreign policy, national security. Some highlights of note as far as the economy is concerned. The president called for bolder fiscal sort of moves by the government. In fact, earlier this month, just about a couple of weeks into his presidency, his office was able to pass an extra budget bill worth $15 billion, and the National Assembly is expected to vote on that very soon. He also talked about some of his measures to help the livelihoods of the people in the form of vouchers, cash vouchers, and other stimulus measures as well. On a more sort of global implication note, he talked about the ongoing negotiations with the United States and tariffs and these trade issues are concerned. He was careful not to affect the ongoing negotiations, but he was frank and honest to say that the talks were very difficult at this point. In fact, he was unsure that a deadline or some sort of deal could be reached by next week, which is the deadline that this pause on reciprocal tariffs is due. He also touched on the DPRK as well, saying that he was actually surprised that the DPRK responded to South Korea's move to halt these loudspeaker broadcasts at the border. So he did say that he is for improved relations with the DPRK, with coordinations with the U.S., but he also called for improved relations with China and Russia as well. So we got a little more insight into as far as a progress report into President Lee Jae-myung in his presidency.
That was Shin Han in Seoul. Now recapping the headlines, China and the European Union are looking to ease tensions and strengthen ties as they prepare for a summit later this month. U.S. House Republicans remain deadlocked over President Donald Trump's massive tax and spending bill. And South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says his government will swiftly restore relations with China and Russia. That's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to the Beijing Hour, a one-hour podcast news magazine program. We welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Qi Zhi. Thanks for listening.